All right, we are back. We have a lot to talk about. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Mitch Salazar. The final event of the 2025 WSL Championship Tour regular season, the Alexis Tahiti Pro presented by ICEE, finished in awesome conditions at Te Auhupu, with Australians Molly Picklum and Jack Robinson taking home the big wins. The WSL Final Five are now locked for the world title deciding Lexus WSL Finals in Fiji, which starts next week. There's a lot to break down today. First things first, Mitch, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well, Dave. Super stoked to be back. I mean, what an amazing event. What a way to finish off, the regular season on the World Championship Tour by both the men and the women. Shout out to the women. The two finals had to wait multiple days just to be able to surf those 35 minutes. Molly Picklum, obviously fascinating stuff that she was able to do. I think Caitlin Simmers proved that she still belongs in the top five. She's a contender for another World Championship this year. Gabby Ryan, to me, impressed the heck out of me. I mean, she truly went for it. Isabella Nichols, I know she bowed out, but, she had an 8-point ride or close to it in that heat against Fahine. But overall, I feel like the women really performed. On the men's side, a lot of close heats, but a lot of excellent performances. I was really stoked with the way the men performed over there. A lot of excellent scores, too. But more than anything, Chilps provided, man. I mean, what an amazing way to cap off the year.
We've been on a little bit of a heater. We finished J-Bay. It was cooking.
Yep.
Like Tahiti was pumping. But let's get into it. Who were the winners and losers from the Lexus Tahiti Pro for you, Mitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to say, but the top five members on both the men's and women's side that they weren't able to make it into the Lexus WSL Finals, and Kanoa, Ethan, Isabella, Sakura, just by the skin of her teeth, she was able to maintain one of those top five spots. But overall, great performances all season long. I got to give them that. I'm a little bummed that Cano wasn't able to make it past the elimination round. I feel like he was deserving of competing for a world championship for the second time in his career. Isabella Nichols also multiple finals. She got a win over there at Bells. I thought her surfing overall this year really evolved. I thought she looked great at backdoor. She looked good over here in Tahiti, but she needed to perform better. And that's the issue with, being one of the high seeds coming up against the wild cards at a location like this. They're specialists at these types of waves. Talking about Kali Vaz, Mihimana Bray, and of course, Vahina Fierro. She's, to me, one of the all-time greats when it comes to heavy water waves on the women's side, and really stoked to be able to see her perform that way. But it's a bummer for Isabella. But same thing for Ethan Ewing, man. I mean, that one heat against Griffin, it goes his way. He's probably qualifying in the end. It wasn't enough, and Jack Robinson was able to snag that position away from him. But overall, to me, this was an excellent year and season for them, and we're going to see them back in 2026 with a different format that's probably going to benefit their styles too.
Yeah, and a special shout out to Isabella Nichols. I was in the water for that one, and I think Vahine was probably the gnarliest draw on either side, like men's 100%. Or women's. And Isabella really handled that heat well. I thought it was just one of those things where Vahine was on a heater, but Isabella put up some good scores as well. But first loser coming out of Tahiti for me is really related to yours. I zeroed in, unfortunately, on Kanoa Igarashi. He's my guy. He's your guy for sure. You guys surf together all the time. And he had an awesome season, right? He transitioned from Sharpeye to JS, which is a huge get for the tractors, and really peaked around the middle of the season. Runner-up at Bells Beach, third place at Snapper Rocks, and then another runner-up at Lower Trestles. So just a stellar year. He entered Tahiti ranked third overall. And as you mentioned, he ended up going down to local Tahitian Mihimana Bray in the elimination round. It was a 2.8 heat total to Bray's 7.5. Kanoa needed a 5.5, couldn't find it, equal 17th place. And on both men's and women's side, unfortunately, Kanoa fell the furthest. He fell 4 places to 7th, outside of the top 5. No ticket to Fiji, which I think, and you would know this better than I would, having surfed with him so much. I think that's actually a spot where he could be more lethal than people give him credit for. Hard to watch, but that's sports, and I think there's a lot of positives going on for Kanoa Igarashi at the moment, and so we'll see how 2026 treats him.
Yeah, he should have a major bounce back, but this is where I go to, the point of always winning events throughout the year. The only person in the men's top 5 that didn't win an event that actually qualified for the Lexus WSL Finals was Griffin Colapinto. But that guy in the last 6 events, I mean, it was either a semi or a final on his behalf. So, after the lackluster start for him, he made up for it big time in the back end of it. And, congratulations to him. He moved up all the way to number 3. If he would have won the event over Jack, where Jack wouldn't have qualified for the Lexus WSL Finals, he would have ended up being the number 2 seed over Jordy Smith. That just goes to show you how you can, turn things around from one end to the other quickly. And, yeah, props to Kanoa, man. Once again, number 7 in the world, that's great. Obviously, he wants to win an event and prove that he can compete for a world championship. I think he's got it in him in the future years. But that's actually my second loser. I have overly patient surfers in these heats in perfect waves. If you look at his Instagram and, not just taking it out on him, he's like, hey, these are surf trip waves that we want to have in a jersey. And I understand that. You want to be waiting for the best waves the entire time. But you also need to understand that you're in a time-restricted space. Because of those restarts, now you're thinking to yourself, okay, I have these extra 35 minutes, an extra few waves come through, the judges deem it rideable, and now I don't have those 35 minutes that I'm expecting once again. I only have 20. And in those 20 minutes remaining, there's really only 10 minutes of waves that are rideable after that. So you've already lost 15 minutes. You had the one restart. Then the other 15 minutes go by. You don't catch a single wave. And you're going up against a specialist in Mihimana Bray, who is hungry for a result, obviously. He didn't dedicate enough time to the regional QS to be able to qualify for the Challenger. This was his focus. You need to understand that going into this event. And unfortunately, for a lot of these overly patient surfers, they went down without an opportunity of even swinging at it. So you got to go out there and still understand that you have a task to do, and that's go out there and compete regardless of how it is, Dave.
It's a great point. I think one of the things that, in the pre-internet days of the Dream Tour, like we'd all would just get kind of the VHS highlights, or you'd read the magazines and all the photos would be perfect. But, even at idyllic spots, and even at idyllic spots with great forecasts like we had in Tahiti, like it's like surfing anywhere in the world. There are going to be slower heats. There's going to be heats with their lully and heats that are tricky, and that's just the way it is. But I mean, we did have pumping surf, right? And I think, an event with pumping surf like the Lexus Tahiti Pro had, it is a little bit hard to find losers. And I know we're going to touch on this a little bit in the next segment, but we have now 3-time Vizsla CT Shaper of the Year winners, Lost Surfboards, helmed by Matt Biolis. They won after the last event at Jeffreys Bay. They just ran up the scoreboard again in Tahiti. And their dominance over the last 3 years since we've been measuring this is just insane, like any way you slice it. And, I wanted to shout out, like, one of the trends that kickstarted the desire to develop the CT Shaper rankings was actually the story of Marcio Zuvi's Sharp Eye. And they really, really rose to dominance in the early 2020s. That said, they haven't been able to mount a real challenge to Mayhem over the last 3 years. And Tahiti, for them, marked only the second time since we've been measuring these results that they failed to put a result on the board. Sharp Eye team rider Jack Robinson elected to ride his Hawaii-shaped Arakawas to victory in Tahiti. So, again, not a loser per se, but I think relative to the potential of the Sharp Eye brand, I'm sure that team has gone back to the drawing board and going, okay, like, how do we contend moving forward, considering we were so dominant just a few years ago?
Yeah, it's a great point, because you're trying to add people to your team and not decrease them, right? And in the end, especially going up against Matt Biolis and the incredible Lost Surfboards team, they've actually added more people from last year into this one, and they have a lot more surfers in the finals this year than they had last year too. So, yeah, big shout out to them. They've obviously been deserving of it, and I feel like Gian Bernini, the team manager, has a lot to do with that too, with recruiting everybody. But it is hard to find losers at a venue like this, as you said, when the waves are pumping. But that's really it. It's the people that weren't there for the event, the people that weren't able to requalify for the second half of the season. Look at what you lost out on. And that's the whole purpose of the cut. And I know it's gone next year, but look at the events that you could have potentially surfed in the back end of the year. And the same thing, it goes to my second point. You're not always guaranteed it during those 30, 35-minute heats that you have out there in the water. But you're probably going to get at least a couple of waves like that during the free surf too. And your motivation just goes sky high when it's like that, man. I mean, you want to surf in those waves. You want to be able to prove yourself when it's bumping. And in the end, that's what motivates people like Jack Robinson to get out of bed every day and want to work their butt off to be able to compete and potentially win a world championship in a few weeks.
It's a good one. I'm going to put you on the spot here. One men's and women's surfer who didn't make the cut, who you would have liked to have seen in Tahiti last week.
Jackson Bunch. Sorry.
Oh, interesting. Oh, look at you. You're quick on the trigger there.
Yeah, I was already thinking about a few of them, actually. Just because personally, I'm a huge fan of Jackson. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a kid that I've known since he was super young. And both of them goofy footers. I mean, we saw Sawyer last year compete as a rookie. She proved herself. You know, she had a couple of great waves, especially being a newbie at that location. But yeah, always got to go with the goofies at a location like this. A left-hander, it's a slab.
Great choices. Third loser coming out of Tahiti for me, and this may sound a little odd considering the event winners, but it's actually the Australians as a collective. And the Australians, they're going to be entering the world title deciding WSL finals next week with the smallest representation we've ever seen in the finals era of competitive surfing. Both Jack Robinson and Molly Picklum will be in Fiji competing for the lucky country. And that's it, just two surfers. On the women's side, we mentioned it. We saw Isabella Nichols. She got knocked out of the final five by wildcard Vahine Fierro in Tahiti. And on the men's side, we also talked about Ethan Ewing. Had a chance, but came up just short, finishing 6th overall this year. Of course, having Jack and Molly as your representatives for world title battles, nothing to sneeze at. But given Australia's history in the sport, it does feel like these are potentially more anemic times than we've seen in quite a while for them.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, same thing for Ethan. He needs to win events to be able to maintain a spot right there in the top 5. And I think with the format change for next year, there's still a possibility that you go into the postseason events now, you know, that are going to be considered ultra exclusive at that point, especially, you know, events like Abu Dhabi. Portugal, it's changing, you know, the scenario for the dates once again. And of course, Pipe counting for 15,000 points if you're able to win. So there's extra motivation going to the back end of the year for them right there in terms of the points that you can potentially make up for it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that shouldn't be the goal in the first part of the year either. So I like Ethan's chances considering that we're heading into the Australian leg first thing. But yeah, I agree with you. I think especially on the women's side, there's a lack of female representatives on tour. I know Sally's really close to requalifying once again, but you've had India Robinson in the past. There's a couple of great surfers up and coming once again. Jolly Stokes is one of them. Oceana Rogers. And, of course, you have Sophie McCulloch, who's also a charger.
Good surfer.
And I feel like once she gets back on tour, I mean, the waves are really good to her style. And, yeah, it should be really fun on the Challenger Series during the offseason. But, you know, here on the CT, it's a different game. You have one chance in a heat, and if you're out, it's either a good result or a really poor one. So
and
got to make up for it.
And I was going to say, it's finite space on tour. It's finite space at the top. And we've talked about over the last 5-10 years, you know, the rise of the Brazilian storm means that some countries are getting pushed out on the men's side. And I'd say on the women's side, you know, in the last few years, I'd say the rise of the young Americans and Hawaiians have really started pushing the other countries out. So, you know, it ebbs and flows. Things happen in cycles. But yeah, it's just something that I think will be interesting heading into Fiji there. Who have you got for the winners coming out of Tahiti?
Yeah, well, it's actually, you know, a little disagreement right here, but I have Jack Robinson, the lone Australian on the men's side who qualified for the Lexus WSL Finals. And not to say, you know, that we're disagreeing on that matter, but he's the one guy that I look at and I just see Fiji. He made the semis last year at this location. He needs that little extra incentive and that motivation. Knowing him personally, it almost seems like he wants that extra push and pressure to be able to perform in these spotlight moments. And 2 out of the last 3 years in Tahiti, he's done it. Beat Medina in the final in a comeback, literally in the last 7 or 8 minutes of that final back in 2023. Last year was a poor result, we know that. But here in 2025, it was either win or go home, and he luckily won, made it all the way up to number 4. Itala, who was having a spectacular year, he's down to number 5, and especially with priority being awarded to the higher seed here at the Lexus WSL Finals for the first time in history, this is huge for Jackie Boy. I really like his chances, especially if it's 6 feet plus. He's a great combination surfer, both barrels and maneuvers out there at a wave like Cloudbreak.
It's a great pick. You know, vaguely related, I think my first winner coming out of Tahiti is Team Red Bull. Right. And I'm using Team Red Bull to kind of backdoor my actual pick here is really the statement performance of Australia's Molly Picklum, who is a Red Bull team rider. But yeah, I think if you look at the men's and women's WSL Final 5 for the upcoming event in Fiji, 7 out of the 10 are Red Bull team riders. Jordy Smith, Griffin Colapinto, Jack Robinson, and Italo Ferreira on the men's side, Molly Picklum, Katie Simmers, and Caroline Marks on the women's side. That is damned impressive. And a shout out to the entire group over at Red Bull, and I think Stan Feast, who was in Tahiti working with a number of those athletes. I mean, they delivered. But, back to Molly Picklum. Oh my God, I had the good fortune of watching her work from the water through those opening rounds, and her positioning in the lineup, where she actually sets up her waves, and the line that she locks in on her backhand at Teahupo'o. It's like second to none. I was so impressed, and everyone on the channel was just blown away. And I think that bodes very, very well for her title campaign at the WSL Finals in Fiji next week. So, first winner, Team Red Bull, but really Molly Picklum.
If there's one word that I think really describes Molly in Tahiti for this event, it's fearlessness. I mean, she went for it from the start. She had a 9 literally in the first 5 seconds of her opening round heat. Like, that's impossible to do out there, especially being one of the first heats of the morning, too, not seeing too many waves out there in the lineup. It was an increasing swell throughout that day, too. And then in the final, once again, after 4 days off, I know you're working with Tereva David, who's an incredible local right there. You have your partner, Austin, in the channel, too. But overall, I mean, having that much time off and then getting to surf those waves in a final against your arch nemesis, Katie, who's had her number the majority of her career so far, it's really impressive. And she no doubt not only guaranteed the number 1 seed heading into the Lexus WSL Finals, overall, I think she cemented her legacy as being one of the most dominant surfers on the planet at the moment. And, it's her title to lose at this moment, I feel. Like, if she doesn't win, it's because she either has really bad luck or she just competes horribly. But I don't see that happening in a few weeks.
It will be interesting, right? Because I think you're completely right. Both at Pipeline in the past and now at Teahupo'o, like, she is the form surfer on the women's tour. Both of those waves, however, even though they're a little bit different beasts, primarily a barrel, right? And when cloud break is big, yes, it is a big barrel, but it's not just a line your wave up, knife the drop, set your line. Like, there's so much more to read out there and go, well, I'm going to do a turn here and then I'm going to pull up under the ledge. So it'll be interesting to see I think with Molly, if her approach at Pipeline and Tahiti is additive to her overall backhand approach, because it is a more complex beast out at cloud break.
And to pose another question too, who do you work with this event, if anybody?
Right.
Because Tereva's obviously a great local over there in Tahiti. He knows Teahupo'o very well. But who do you work with in Fiji? Do you have somebody that you bring over from Surfing Australia? Do you not have anybody? Do you just have your partner in the channel supporting you right there? Might even be the case for her. I mean, at this moment, you're just rolling.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Well, who do you have for your second winner?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the Tahitian crew, man. Mihimana Bray making it to the semis, his best performance so far as the trials winner this year. Kalia Galina, she becomes the youngest surfer ever to surf in the Championship Tour event. She was 12 when the event started, turned 13 towards the tail end of the waiting period. Teva Taidoa, shout out to him, man. Pushed Jordy Smith to the limit, who Jordy, the top 3 surfer this year, to his very best in the men's elimination round. And once again, Kali Vast. Wow. That guy is just on another level when it comes to barrel riding right here at his home break. But Vahine, once again, super impressed with her. I just feel like the evolution overall of, that entire Tahitian crew. Kiara Gold, who's on the Women's Challenger Series at the moment, she's still a teenager. There's a lot of young talent coming out of that beautiful island, and it's because of, obviously, the waves. I also feel like the French Federation has pulled a lot of those surfers in, and they've truly supported them the way that they deserve it. Jeremy Flores, Michelle Perez in the channel there all day long. Joan Duru right here at the U.S. Open did an incredible job with Paulina Du as well, former CT surfer. So to me, the Tahitian crew, I feel like eventually a lot of those men and women that I just mentioned will be qualifying for the World Championship Tour.
Yeah, shout out to the Tahitians. I think a number of those names you listed too, it's not just that they're hyper specialists out at Teahupo'o now. They're really well-rounded surfers. Mihimana Bray is an awesome all-around surfer, missed out on the Challenger Series this year. But Kauli Vast, he's already having a great campaign on the Challenger Series. So I think you're totally right. Vahina Fierro, same. The Tahitians are just legit all around. Second winner for me, you mentioned him already, but it is the Vortex Shaman, Australia's Jack Robinson. I mean, there's so much to talk about this event, but Jack Robinson in particular, holy shit. He needed to win Tahiti to make the finals, and he won in Tahiti, and now he's in the finals. There's not much else to say, really. He was out there towing and paddling on the monster days before the event. I think Strider Wazalewski in the post show actually made a really astute comment. He's like, Zhao, Cowley, Jack, Griffin, Crosby, these are surfers that were out there on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday before the event started. Monster tow swell, trying to pack bombs on the West Bowl. And, you know, they had some horrible wipeouts. Some of them had some amazing waves. But I really think it shifted their comfort level to where the event had huge surf, but it wasn't like that, right? So it's like if you were there on the Tuesday and Wednesday and you're out in the water sending it, then just your comfort level shifts. So when the event's on, you're ready to go. And you know, Jack, he's running the Arakawas and the Juice. He had his family there. He had his beautiful wife, Julia, his beautiful son, Zen. He had coach Matt Bemrose there. He had it all, and he just kind of sent it. The guy was undeniable in Tahiti and is definitely going to be a one to watch in Fiji in 2 weeks. I also want to do a shout out to IC Sunglasses as well. They've been on a hell of a run. It's just awesome eyewear. They had their whole team there in Tahiti, had all the vibes. They sponsored the event at Teahopu, scored on the swell. They signed Jack Robinson just before the event. They got an event winner, and now they have a contender in the finals. So, yeah, winners all around for those crew.
No, and Joey Santley and the entire IC crew, man, they were on the boat over there every day. It was so funny when they were rooting on their team riders, Haushi, Jack, as he said. But once again, I just want to touch on the subject. I know I already talked about Jack, but it's the implications, as you said. You know, he needs that extra push, that extra motivation, that little incentive, and especially having your family right there. Leandro, he's been working with for years, Matt Bemrose, as you said, the team manager for the Volcom surf team. It all comes together, and it just seems like in those moments of brilliance, he really shines. And overall, that's a location where you don't want to be able to surf against those types of people. But I think to your point, proving yourself in the gnarliest of surf days ahead, that's also an intimidation factor for everybody else, and especially when you're paddling at that size. I mean, easily somebody could have lost their life in those kind of conditions, and luckily nobody did.
Sure.
But Griff, Crosby, I was not expecting that. Kali, you're obviously going to see it. That's a guy that knows that wave inside and out. Mihimana, the same thing. And Jack Robinson, man, I mean, overall, you gotta give him a lot of credit for doing that, heading into the event knowing that the only way he's qualifying for the Lexus WSL Finals is winning. And then if your body's on the line too, are you even going to be able to surf in the finals if you qualify? Right. So big push right there by those guys. And overall, big shout out. There's a lot of commitment to that.
100%.
And, you know, I'm getting a little fired up right here. It's only 12:35 in the afternoon. Yeah. But my third winner, and just to continue being fired up, it's professional surfing at the moment. You can't understate how good it is. What kind of impact the broadcast makes personally. You know, I've had the pleasure and fortune to be able to work in many different locations worldwide. I also do the broadcast in Spanish, as you know, and being able to work these events to me is a true pleasure, just because when I know the waves are on, it makes our job way less difficult and much more enjoyable. Same thing for the audience. But if there's a true winner out of this event, it's definitely professional surfing. People stepped up when they needed to. The waves showed up. I feel like performances were through the roof. And even people that lost still were losing with 15, 16 points every now and then. And I feel like that Griffin Joao heat deserves a lot of credit for having a major impact on the world title race too, because Joao Chianca pushed him to another level. I love seeing that. They're specialists in these types of waves, but I think it just goes to show how complete a lot of these surfers are on the World Championship Tour and how much they elevate their performances in the nick of time too. Big shout out to my guy, Al Cleland Jr., taking out Baron Mamiya. In the last 10 seconds of their heat, he makes it through into the round of 16. I know he lost in the next one, but overall, this event was packed with a lot of different emotions, and I was here for it.
Al's another one that was out there on those Tuesdays and Wednesdays, like sitting on the bowl. What a maniac. And that's like a week removed from winning heats at Half Foot Huntington Beach. Like that's unbelievable to me. Yeah. But yeah, and you think too, like obviously this year we had a shift generationally, right? John Florence took a year off. Gabriel Medina was out with an injury. Like Steph Gilmore had another sabbatical year. Like Carissa Moore took a year away to become a mom. And whether they come back or not, like the talent really stepped up. And I actually think by that talent stepping up and obviously scoring the world's best waves and competing at a very, very high level, I think there's an element of like the Andy Kelly thing where when Andy started coming onto the scene and dominating, it sparked something in Kelly to return. It wouldn't surprise me if the performances of the surfers this year and the waves they've gotten encourage some of those surfers like John, Carissa, Gabrielle, maybe even Steph to go, wow, I want to come back. Like this sounds really cool. And so we'll see what happens in 2026. But yeah, third winner for me is not too far from what you had there. And that's just surf fans. I mean, I think we were treated to something really special at Teahupo'o. And now you just take a look at the absolute murderer's row of talent for the upcoming Lexus WSL finals. On the women's side, match one, we'll see Betty Lusakura Johnson take on former world champion Caroline Marks. The winner is then going to take on reigning women's world champion Katie Simmers in match two. The winner of that takes on powerhouse Gabriella Bryan in match three, and the winner of that challenges the aforementioned Molly Picklum for the world title at Cloudbreak. On the men's side, former world champion Italo Ferreira takes on Jack Robinson round one. The winner faces Griffin Colapinto in match two. The winner of that battles Jordy Smith in match three, and the winner of that faces Brazilian Iago Dora for the world title in Fiji. So hopefully the swell continues to deliver in the South Pacific, because I think we're about to see some fireworks.
Yeah, 6 to 8 feet. That's all I'm asking for. 4 to 6 would be fun too. I'm not going to lie. Shortboarding would be a cool element to it too, but I want to see it proper cloud break. Or restaurants too. It's also a possibility, but yeah, barrels with combos of turns, to me, that would be the picture-perfect finish right here for a great season.
So that's it. That's winners and losers from the Lexus Tahiti Pro presented by IC. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we are going to talk surfboards and the upcoming Lexus WSL finals. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodent here with Mitch Salazar. You know, this segment is where we typically update our listeners on the Vissla CT Shaper rankings. Of course, after Jeffreys Bay, the event prior to Tahiti, Lost Surfboards, helmed by Matt Biolis, they claim their back-to-back-to-back three-time CT Shaper of the Year title. Still some interesting things went down at Teahupo'o, Mitch. Jack Robinson, Sharp-Eyed team rider, he was riding his Hawaii-shaped Arakawas to victory. We saw Mihimana Bray riding James Chile surfboards. They got on the board for the first time. What were some of the things you noticed just in the equipment choices of the world's best surfers at the end of the road?
A really good question regarding, the equipment, because I feel like a lot of people still like to ride those smaller boards even when it's bombing. There were a couple of guys, especially the larger dudes, that I feel are still going to ride something just a bit longer. Talking about Connor O'Leary, Cole Hauschmand, even Ethan now and then, for how tall he is and how big he is, tends to ride, really short boards. Overall, though, you want something that's brought in, pintail or at least a round pin, a lot more control. Personally, I love Swallows. It's basically a double pintail right there when you ride a Swallow, but I feel like that's more of a medium-sized kind of board, personally, or at least the tail. But overall, I feel like you're probably seeing your step drivers, your F1s, which is a new model that they're releasing soon with Cole Hauschmand, your Driver 3.0, which is probably the best, and most high-performance board that they have on the planet, too. But from DHD, I was impressed. The 3DV, the Juliet a lot. Both Connor and Ethan were riding those models. And I'm just looking at the rankings at the moment, too. Molly Picklum obviously taking the win for them. There's a big reason why they're in second this year. Yeah. That's because of Molly's success overall. But major shout-out to Jason Stevenson, too. First year breaking the top 5, and he finishes at number 5 at the moment. Marco Mignot, Rookie of the Year. Awesome performance by him. He beats Miggy in a buzzer beater performance, too, in the elimination round. And after that, that forces Al and Joel to have to really go deep into the event to be able to take it away from him. But Mayhem, they got another Rookie of the Year with Aaron Brooks. Congratulations to the sole representative of the Great White North in Canada, right. Aaron. And, Sharp Eye, this is where, the good thing about having the relationship with Marcio and Eric Arakawa benefits Jack. But in the end, it doesn't truly benefit Marcio that much. But I respect it, though, because in the end, if you want this person on your team, if you want him to be able to represent your label on your boards in the majority of the events overall throughout the year, you got to give him some little wiggle room at these events where he knows that the Arakawas are probably going to be better under his feet. So I love that relationship, the way it works, but it definitely goes Eric's way in this one.
It's very Andy Irons-esque. That was always the line with Andy, as he sort of made his ascent to winning back-to-back-to-back world titles, was he was an Arakawa guy, HIC guy, like his whole upbringing. And then, as is the case, like when you're the new hot talent on tour, people are just throwing board quivers at you. And he would work with Mayhem, he would work with JS, he would work with Channel Islands, he'd work with a number of different shapers. But I think with all of those relationships, he always carved out, in the juice, I'm riding my Arakawas. Very similar with Jack Robinson, who obviously, there's a lot of comparisons, even in the way that he approaches the ocean to both Irons brothers there. The other interesting story that we've talked about throughout the year is, Jordy Smith, right? Current world number 2. He's in the hunt for the world title. I think we've mentioned it before in our Vissla CT Shaper Rankings program. He's done something we've never seen, which is he collected results this year for 3 different shapers, right? Smith Shapes, which is his dad Graham's label, Mayhem, and JS, right? And then in Tahiti, we saw him on Pizels. And I actually read something interesting on Stab. We were doing a bit of reporting on the relationship because there's a bit of an older story about when John was dominating on tour and, doing crazy turns out at 12-foot main break in Margaret River on these new designs that, Jordy was like, well, I want to get some boards. And apparently Pizel was like, look, I'm going to back John. He's my horse. I can't back you at the same time. You're also in the title hunt, which is not uncommon in the shaping community. And there was some sort of trickery going on. I think there was some online ordering under a false name, and he ended up getting some Pizels sneakily. But he was running the logoed Pizels out in Tahiti, and I don't know, Mitch, given your background as a professional surfer too, and your relationship with different board builders, what did you make of Jordy's approach this season, and just the fact that he was running Pizels at Teahupo'o?
Well, look, I know that he's got a big old quiver for Fiji too, so he's probably going to be riding those over there as well. But I don't think you're in the wrong knowing how competitive a lot of these shapers are and how good of surfers they are too. I mean, most of these guys rip, and when I mean rip, they shred. Like, most of these guys could have been pro surfers. They became board builders instead, working with a lot of the world's best surfers. And I don't think it's something bad, personally, especially for Jordy, having his relationship with his father and having his relationship with Matt Biolas. Rode for a long time with the Channel Islands crew too, when Al was still shaping the majority of the boards, and I think it's something good, and it's benefited him, obviously. I mean, he's having his career year so far. It's the first time ever where he's won 2 events within the same season, which is just absurd if you think about him being on tour for 18 years now. But overall, I think it's something positive, and if it ain't broke, keep doing it. So in the end, if it's something that benefits you and other labels get something out of it, but it's not affecting your own father's business, dude, go for it. I mean, to me, it seems like it's something that's 50-50 for both. So, yeah, I see it as something super positive.
Yeah, well, congratulations to all the board builders this season, and thank you, Vissla, for sponsoring the CT Shaper Rankings. We're going to keep talking surfboards into this next segment too, but before we transition to the upcoming Lexus WSL Finals and kind of look at these matchups, look at what equipment they may be riding, Mitch, have you been surfing the last couple of weeks, and if so, what have you been riding?
Yeah, on my OG puddle jumper. So rode it this morning as a thruster. I just got a quad though. I went to my local surf shop. Shout out to Dane Breimer and TK over at the Frog House. Super stoked, with the Evil quad that I just got set up. So that's something that I'm going to be riding in the future on the smaller days. Still riding the Uber Driver XL. Probably, the best board that I have in my quiver. Best all-around board, I'd say. The big rig. Have the Pizel White Tiger, which is amazing in small surf as well. And that's in a dark arts construction. But for the most part, it's actually been kind of, in and out when it comes to the swell directions that we've had here in SoCal the last 10 days or so, right after the U.S. Open. So been working a lot too, which hasn't helped to my schedule. But yeah, kind of sticking with the same thing. But I'm looking to order a round-nose fish redux once again. To me, it's a board that works in anything. And I also want to get something like Cole has under his feet with the F1. So hopefully I can get one of that. But I know you've been riding your mod quad. Let's see it. I mean, did Brent and did Britt, did they already hook you up with your board you're expecting over there from CI or what?
I did. They did hook me up. I got my Better Day Spine Tech, also a quad. The mod quad's been really sick as well. Like when you're a surfer and people of varying levels, like in your brain, you're like, that model, like saw that person surfing that, or the outline. It's like that is definitely going to be the board that's going to help me surf better. And so often for me anyway, I'm like, I got it. And I'm like, that's not the board's fault, but this is not hitting the way I thought it was going to hit. And then sometimes you just grab a board off the rack and you're like, I just need something to go. And you're like, hey, this worked really, really well. But I'm happy to report I got my better every day in Spine Tech. I got it right before the US Open. I had a couple surfs at River Jetties with Logan Dooley in midweek during the US Open. It was pretty small, so it's hard to tell. Brought it to Tahiti, did not take it out of the bag while I was there. So maybe if I'd put some straps on it, I could have towed with it or other. But there have been waves since I've been home. It is an awesome board. It's so easy. It's so fast. It's loose. It feels really good. I'm going to bring it to Fiji here in a couple days. And then I also have a polyurethane CI 2 Pro round tail. That's
a great board.
Just my short board, and I don't get to use it very often around here. I probably could, but those are pretty good boards. But I think that's kind of the thing. You go to surf like good waves for a while, like in Fiji, and then you're like, I need to order more short boards. Like, this is excellent, And then you get home, you're like, I need to order like a mid-length or whatever. So I'm sure I'll be feeling that out there too. But yeah, appreciate everyone in the board building community. You guys make us really excited. But let's go to Fiji for the Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cerro. Mitch, given my job as Chief Strategy Officer for the WSL, I'll do my best to stay out of the predictions game, but you are one of the best core analysts in the surfing game. So I'm going to ask you what you think about these matchups. We'll start on the women's side. Match one for the women, we're going to see Hawaii's Betty Lou Sakura Johnson against former women's world champion Caroline Marks. Both of them are Mayhem team riders. Yep. What do you predict in terms of equipment in Fiji, and how do you see these two dancing out at Cloudbreak?
I'd be surprised if they're not on the driver, both of them. I mean, first of all, let's get into Caroline having an excellent 4 events in the back end of the season too. I mean, she snuck in there and just over 50,000 points, so she barely edged out Sakura at number 5. So Caroline's going to start with priority. That's a big thing. But yeah, I feel like, for the most part, either a step driver if it's big enough, or you're going to be riding the driver 3.0. And Caroline's sneaky there too, dude. I mean, goofy footer, knows how to ride the barrel. She's obviously gotten way better on her forehand too. That's something that we've definitely seen become a tool of hers in the past. She won the Olympics last year in Tahiti. As we said, it's a very different wave over there at Cloudbreak in comparison to Chopes. But I like the read that she has on the wave. And for Sakura, it's only her second time competing at this location, but really in the biggest moment of her career so far. I mean, you're a top 5 surfer for the first time. You're competing for your first world championship. So let's see if she can calm her nerves, and especially with Tommy Whitaker in her corner, I feel like this could be a good matchup. But edge, in my opinion, to Caroline at the moment.
And the only goofy footer in the women's draw, right? And then,
correct.
And while I think in match 1, that doesn't have a huge advantage, right? Because it's more, okay, well, this is a point of difference. I think you're right. Just her experience out there. She's working with Luke Egan. Yeah, I mean, he's no slouch out at open ocean left-handers either. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes. But I'm with you. I think both of these girls, it's going to be awesome to see them tango in that opening match. The winner, Agnostica, who wins, is going to face the reigning women's world champion in Katie Simmers. I think, the last few years, and especially last year when she won the world title, it really felt like a new era of women's surfing. It's like this young woman. She draws these amazing lines. She's great on her forehand. She's great on her backhand. Such a fun surfer. I think even at the start of the year, maybe it was after the Surf Abu Dhabi event, you and I were saying she's probably the most important surfer on tour, the most interesting surfer on tour. dominate through the year, but has had a very solid year and really dangerous. She rides for Chris Boris Surfboards out of San Diego. Mitch, what do you think about just Katie's chances in this venue, in this draw, and the equipment that you might see from her in Fiji?
Yeah, well, if there's one thing that we definitely know about Katie, is that she has a deep relationship with Chris Boris. They've been working together since she was about 8 or 9, and seeing her compete in Southern California from that age onwards up until where she is right now, I can truly tell you that they know what they're working on when it comes to different locations, different waves. And once again, having already been here last year, this is a location where I expect her to improve on. I think her backhand is probably, if not the best in the world, compared to Caroline Marks up there. So watch out for her. Her barrel riding is extraordinary. But once again, I just think she truly is the most important surfer on the planet, both men and women. She draws distinct lines. She's very creative. But most importantly, she goes for things. And, we saw that in the final against Molly over there in Tahiti. She didn't win, but she definitely tried. And I think in the end, that's definitely what you have to do, especially when you only have one opportunity to advance. So doesn't necessarily ride the longest of boards. If it does get big, expect a couple inches over her height. But then, I think overall you're still looking at something that has a lot of pivot, especially as one of the smaller surfers. You want to be able to fit in the pocket as much as possible. So I expect a really broad entail from Chris Boris right here for Katie.
Yeah, and great attitude and sense of humor too. As you pointed out, she got rolled in that final in Tahiti against Molly, but basically posted a highlight reel of her getting torched on the inside and just praising a Red Bull teammate Molly, and just they have so much admiration for each other. Those two were spending a ton of time together on the lay days too. I think they ducked off to Maria, so it's a really cool relationship. Winner of that match is going to take on Gabriella Bryan, another Mayhem team rider. What do you think about equipment choice? She could be on the driver as well, and also just her approach on her backhand at Cloudbreak.
Well, she has most definitely improved on the backhand. And she went for it in Tahiti too, which to me was very impressive, first of all, but also in a sense surprising because she had already guaranteed her spot in the Lexus WSL finals, right? So how much did you need to risk? But I liked it because she knew that she was still going for number one. And, if she was able to edge out Molly, she was eventually going to get to that number one seeding. It didn't happen, but I still think that Molly needs to be very careful of that person over her shoulder. And considering, the amount of power that she has, power matches power at this wave, Dave. And I know her barrel riding skills on the back end aren't there in comparison, to Katie or to Molly yet. But I feel like when it's that one equalizer that you have with one big turn on the outside section, Gabby has that. I think driver all the way, maybe step driver if it does get, big enough out there. But overall, Gabby's wave selection, especially with priority at the beginning of the heat, is something that we really need to look out for. And especially another thing to consider too, if there's one person where I'd say out of the women's draw benefits the most, not surfing a heat previous to your opening match, it's Gabby. She wants to save her energy heading into the final matches, and now knowing that, number one seed wins the world championship automatically if they win the first one, she's going to force all three. And she can do that all day long.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think, pound for pound, she's maybe like the strongest surfer in the draw, like the most powerful. And
100%.
I think you make a good point on her backhand tube riding. I think it was like a little bit of learning on the job in Tahiti. She had an amazing couple of rides, like excellent scoring waves. And you could tell how stoked she was just to achieve that and for that kind of success. And I think if she gets her timing down out of big cloud break and lines up some of those sections, she could be really, really deadly. Winner of that match is going to take on the current front runner. Current front runner only has to win one match to claim the world title. We've talked about her a lot on this podcast. It's Molly Picklum. She rides for Darren Hanley Designs that just celebrated their 40th year. What do you think about Molly's skill set, toolbox out at a wave like Cloudbreak, and what kind of equipment do you think she'll be on from Darren Hanley?
This is the most interesting one out of everybody. It's going to be the same way with Yago on the men's side. But after Gabby lost out in the semis, she really benefited off of Katie getting second. I mean, she has nearly 7,000 points over Gabby Bryan in second place at the moment. So I expect the Juliet to be ridden here. 3DV maybe as the backup. But yeah, I expect Juliet for the DHD team rider. And she's just, put your head down, go for it, regardless of how it is. That's how she won Sunset a few years ago with the one big snap that could have been a 10 in my personal opinion.
Oh, my God. It's amazing.
Probably should have been a 10 with the single turnout there. But as you said, she's done well at Pipe. She's already won in Tahiti. But look at the different places that she's made finals so far already this year and where she's won. In Brazil, majority of the waves on the backhand too, so there's a lot of expertise and things coming out of her evolution that we hadn't seen up until this year, and especially in the back end of it too. So Abu Dhabi, great event for her, finished runner-up over there to Katie. But since then, I mean, she's really had her number. So props to Molly. I think she's going to be going for it, and I think the way she's going to address the heat really depends on whoever wins that final match going into her. So preparation is going to be a big thing for her, but I feel like she's going to find a corner of solitude and make sure that she's ready to go once that one final match starts.
I love it. Great breakdown of the women's draw at the Lexus WSL finals in Fiji. Let's switch over to the men. Match one is going to see 2019 world champion Italo Ferreira. Italo is one of two team riders riding for Timmy Patterson Designs, the other being Al Cleland Jr. on tour this year. Italo's Seed 5. He's going to take on the winner of the Lexus Tahiti Pro presented by IC, Jack Robinson. Robbo in Tahiti, as we talked about, was riding Arakawas. He also rides Sharp Eyes. What do you think about this opening matchup on the men's side, the equipment they're going to be riding, and their different skill sets out at Cloudbreak?
So I'm looking at Instagram right now because I'm looking at the Silver Surfboards Instagram page with Tico and Teco, the two guys that shape under Timmy's label in Brazil. And they have this invisible technology right now, which is basically a foam that is much more resistant. It's invisible tech, so gives you more speed, more projection, a lot more control, and it's obviously a high-performance kind of material too. And that's something that we've seen from Italo the last few events. And I know that results haven't translated, but Jovan has his career best performance against him at lowers. Italo still had 16 points in that heat.
Sure.
Then you go into Jeffreys Bay, up and down, right here in Tahiti, surfing at 60% with Reynos in the channel too. I thought he looked exceptional. Loses a really close heat to Jack. And once again, I think the fact that they've already faced each other in the previous event adds more fuel to the fire for this one. I like Italo's chances right here. It's a long left-hand point break. Physically, though, is he going to be 100%? Can he sustain that during multiple matches throughout the day, especially when you know that he's 0 or 100 at every given time? Meanwhile, you have on the other side a much more calculated Jack Robinson who is methodical in his approach. He's definitely one of the fittest surfers on tour. Whether he rides Arakawas or Sharp Eyes, I think depends on the conditions. I think he's going to bring a mixture and a batch of both. I think he's going to lean on the Sharp Eyes. Probably, the 77 to me is a good model out there. I feel like the Inferno is also a really good model for a wave like Cloudbreak. But they've just recently re-released the Game Changer, which I know is just a more all-around board. I think it might be suitable for Cloudbreak too, personally. It's a board that I had ridden in the past, especially at beach breaks, but at a point break that can be variable, especially like a reef, like Cloudbreak. This is something that I potentially see. I think as soon as it gets above 6 feet, though, I think he's going straight to the Arakawas, though. I think that's almost a guarantee. So methodical approach. You basically have a sledgehammer up against a scalpel right here in the opening match.
Well, when I get out there in a few days, I'll have a peek into the board rack and see what the breakdown is for Jack. But winner of that opening match is going to take on Griffin Colapinto. Now, Griffin, we should say, was actually hovering, not making the cut halfway through the year. He's now number 3 in the world with a shot at the world title. Over the back 5 events, he made 3 finals. And the 2 events he didn't make the final and he made the semifinals. It's pretty radical.
Yeah.
He's a Lost Surfboards team rider. What do you think about Griffin's chances out at Cloudbreak, and what kind of equipment is he running from Lost Surfboards?
Well, look, equipment-wise, he's definitely on the driver 3 or going to go up to the step driver if it gets big enough. But he won here last year. And remember, he beat Gabe when conditions were changing that one afternoon.
Sure.
and he went straight at him. He knew that was probably going to be his best chance at beating him. Eventually makes it all the way to the final, defeats Rio Waida in one of his career best performances so far. But I just think this really shows evolution on Griffin's behalf. Same thing we saw in Tahiti. He's really good in heavy waves, and I think surprisingly to a lot of people, I just think it's because Crosby overshadows him with his height. Griffin's not a small brother.
No, he's not.
He's pretty large, and he's got a lot of muscle mass on him, kind of similar build to Jack Robinson. I like his chances personally. And I think being out of lower is a huge benefit to him. Huge.
Right.
I mean, the fact that he doesn't have that pressure right there, you don't have all of those people around you. They're watching you online right now. It's not the same thing as hearing them in the channel or in person right there. So I think he's going to have a small, concentrated camp. I think he's going to be able to make sure that he's secluded when he needs to be. And as we saw in Tahiti, he's really just enjoying himself too. Because especially as you said, there was a point at the beginning of the year where there was doubt whether or not he was going to make the cut. And then after event 4, he just shoots straight to the top. So now I truly feel like he could be the first Californian world champion since Tom Curran in 1991. That's how I feel personally at the moment. Just looking at his results in the back end, and I'm going to give you the biggest motivator. It's because he never won an event out of all of those. So it's the one cherry on top, bro. It's the one cherry on top that's missing just to cement that legacy right here, especially with the last time we see the finals format.
Nostradamus over here. If Griffin wins the world title, we're going to pull that comment. We'll just send it everywhere. Be like, you should have listened to Mitch, man. Winner of that match is going to take on the South African Jordy Smith. We've talked about Jordy a lot this year. Fitter than he's ever been, surfing better than he ever has. Yeah. I think something with Jordy, because he is so virtually untouchable at places like Jeffreys Bay, at right-hand point breaks, like his forehand, his pacing, his power, his progressiveness. I think his backhand often gets overshadowed, and he's spoken quite a lot about it as well. Like, it's something he's put a lot of time in, and I think people are unfairly surprised when he does well on his backhand, but his backhand's always been elite as well. It's just not the strongest arrow he has in his quiver compared to his forehand. But we talked about him earlier. He's ridden for his dad shapes, Smith surfboards. He's ridden for Lost surfboards. He's ridden for JS surfboards, and now ridden for Paizel surfboards. What do you think about the big South African's chances at Cloudbreak, Mitch? And what boards he pulling out of the board bag to compete?
Well, we already talked about him, ordering that Paizel quiver. He's definitely having those. I wouldn't be surprised that he has a couple of JSs also stashed in there because those were kind of his go-tos when it was bigger at Bell's. Same thing at J-Bay. And of course, I think Smith Shapes is also going to have a presence right here. I wouldn't be surprised that he has like 3 or 4 board bags, honestly, for a one-day event. I know he was just in California with Garth Tarlow, who's the team manager for O'Neill, and they were hanging out here a few days in transit over there to Fiji. But something has changed truly with Jordy this year. I'm loving it. Always been a huge fan of Jordy Smith, now at 37 years of age. If there's one person that's on tour at the moment that is deserving to be called a world champion, it is this guy. And if it happens, awesome. And if it doesn't, same thing. And this might just be me personally. I don't think it affects his career or his legacy whatsoever whether or not he wins a world championship, or if he never wins one, for that matter too. Because I think we're seeing one of the most influential surfers of all time, one of the most important surfers of all time, contract negotiations, the way he changed the industry with Dane Reynolds back in 07, 08, his debut. And he's never lost his place on tour. I mean, there's been people that have been, on tour for 11, 12 years, but they've been up and down. They've requalified through the Challenger Series. He's never done that. And it's the first time in his career that he's won 2 events within the same season. So something's changed. He's enjoying it. He's a family man now. He has 2 kids at home, and I know that he gives all the credit to his wife, Lyndall, at home for really supporting everybody. But, man, if he does it, it's a Cinderella story. And I know that he doesn't want to retire immediately, but if he does, I'd probably shed a few tears.
Sure,
because this guy's worked his ass off to get to this point, and if he wins, there's truly nobody more deserving for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you broke that down. They're radically different surfers in terms of their approach, but there's a lot of career parallels between him and someone like Taj Burrow, right? Like where
Good point.
changed the game in terms of free surf edits, like awesome free surfers, great CT stalwarts for well over a decade, multiple wins, multiple title campaigns. Taj never got his world title. I mean, if you talk to him, it doesn't really bother him too much. I'm sure if he'd won one, he'd be stoked, but it didn't really diminish his impact on surfing. And I think it's exactly the same with Jordy. Jordy's got a chance in Fiji. We'll see how it goes. I also don't think he sounds like he's anywhere near retiring. I think he's having so much fun, and he's such a great representative of South Africa, and he's still surfing at such an elite level. I'm interested to see A, what he's riding in Fiji, and B, how it goes for him. Whoever,
if you don't mind me,
please.
Adding one more point to it too, though, in terms of the matchup, say he either gets Griffin or somebody else from one of the previous matches. I think the path of least resistance for Jordy, especially with priority being awarded to the higher seed now, is getting a start. You got to get a quick start.
Right.
If there's one thing that's been his Achilles heel throughout the year, it's giving the edge to your opponent early on in the heats. Cole Houshman is a good point over there at lowers. Cole ended up surfing the lefts. Jordy ended up going right. The rights were kind of out to sea in his heat. Didn't end up maximizing his scores. Meanwhile, Cole was really elevating his performances. Same thing over here against Kali Vost, in that men's round of 16 heat. He let him go on a couple insiders. Jordy waited for a super long time, and he just never got going. So now in your mind, you're thinking, okay, now I need 2 scores rather than just 1. You need to put the pressure on your opponent at this point, especially being the number 2 seed. You're surfing way less matches to fight for a world championship.
It's a great note. I'm glad you brought that up. Winner of that match is going to take on the current world number 1, Iago Dora. Iago rides for Lost Surfboards as well. I got to catch up with Iago quite a bit, actually, in the days I was there at the end of the road at Teahupo'o, and he seemed like a man that was on his own trajectory. He was taking his time. He was, going up to the tower on the point, like watching the wave through binoculars. He potentially, like if he were not in the position he was in, you may have seen him sending it much more on those tow days. I think he realizes the position he's in. I think he realizes protecting that lead and being in the number 1 spot and going to a wave like Fiji where 1 heat win gets him the world title. I'm not saying he was conservative in Tahiti, but I think he is very focused on the game at hand. What do you think about that? What do you think about Iago in Fiji, and what kind of equipment do you think he's going to be on?
Yeah, I think he was still pissed when he lost. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you can see it with his body language, with his reaction. But I agree with you in the sense that he knew that there was much more to secure down the line than just at that event.
Sure.
And I respect that. I respect that because, as you said, he's kind of secluded himself, really. He's not even hanging out with any of his buddies or even his dad, for that matter, at these events now. It's really just him and his coach, Leandro da Silva, at the moment. And I respect that. I think it's important. And, he's the one person out of the 5 that hasn't been in this position yet.
Sure.
So I think there's more value to it than we truly see out of it. So, in that sense, I think it's something really valuable for him to be able to be secluded, make sure that he's capitalizing on a golden opportunity that, let's be honest, for most surfers doesn't show up second time around. So he's trying to make the most out of the potential 1 shot that he has. That being said, this guy might be the most talented surfer on the planet at the moment. So I feel like he's going to be competing for world championships down the line too. Driver 3.0 for sure in his board bag. Step driver. I don't know if he's ridden the F1 yet, but I feel like for his style and his frame, it could potentially be a really good board. I'm going to have to text Gion on that and get back to you later on in the days leading up to the Lexus WSL Finals in Fiji. But overall, we've seen him really mature competitive-wise too this year. Multiple wins, of course. Portugal lowers, which is the most high-performance wave on the planet, and he proved that he's capable of surfing many heats to be able to win the event right there. But I also think, his semifinal finishes, his quarterfinal finishes, the fact that he's been able to scratch through those heats. At Burley Heads, he barely beats Al Cleveland Jr. in the last few minutes. Remember, turns it around, an insider wave. Al was super mad that, Yago got the score, but he was deserving of the advancement. And those kind of moments assured him to be the number one seed at the moment. And same thing heading into Jeffreys Bay, by the way. I mean, I think it kind of goes uncredited how well he's evolved on the backhand, especially at a point break that long, and how much he's really improved when it comes to a wave covering that distance, but also bringing his own flair to it, too. How many people outside of Felipe have you really seen, and Italo for that matter, rely on just one maneuver at a wave like Jeffreys Bay where you have an infinite number of sections? And I like that he took that approach to it, and that goes to show that he's also evolved as a human being. He's 29 now. He's not that kid that qualified back in 2017 that made that incredible run over there in Saquarema. Totally different person. I think for Yago, regardless of who he gets in that final match, goal is still be number one in that opening match, especially with priority at the beginning of the heat. He's too well-versed, he's too skilled, and he can ride the barrel just as good as anybody else. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is our world champion right here. I think Yago Dora is our 2025 world champion.
I appreciate the pick, man. Well, and we went a little long there, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I appreciate your breakdown there, Mitch. We're going to take one more break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to answer listener questions and get ready for the Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cerro in Fiji.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Lineup Podcast. I'm your part-time co-host, Mitchell Salazar, here with the great Dave Prodan. Thank you for writing in to @the Lineup Podcast on our Instagram. If we don't get to your question in today's episode, we'll do our very best to respond in our DMs, as we always do. Dave, let's get straight into it. A couple of excellent questions, by the way, for another episode. @Cole Campbell, every single women's event in 25, minus pipe, was won by the new gen. Is the old gen out?
Well, that is a great question. I think it's actually been kind of like a theme of the season, obviously with, Steph Gilmore, 8-time women's world champion, extending her sabbatical an extra year. Carissa Moore, 5-time women's world champion, taking a year off to become a mom. I think we've been talking about this final five group, right? Molly Picklum, Gabriella Bryan, Katie Simmers, Caroline Marks, Betty Lusker Johnson. The average age is very young for these surfers. I will say, 2-time women's world champion Tyler Wright, she won at Pipeline to start the year. Isabella Nichols, she won, I believe, at Bells Beach this year. So not 100%, but at the same time, I think it's a worthy point. And something that we've looked at both on the men's and women's side are these generational cycles that you see on tour, right? And I think that, finger in the wind, on the men's side, it's about a decade, it's about 10 years, and you see a new generation come in, momentum generation, and then the Cooley kids, or probably Andy's in the mix there, and then, the Brazilian Storm. So every 10 years, you see this cycle on the men's. I think it's a little bit faster on the women's side. You could argue it's about half, right? It's about every 5 years. And
If that,
yeah. But there's so much talk about, Canada's Erin Brooks this year coming on tour. She won the last event last year as a wild card in Fiji. I think there's a lot of pressure put on her. She won Rookie of the Year. She surfed very, very well. She consistently posted excellent scores, but really, ran into a generation of women who aren't that much older than her, right? It might just be like a few years older than her. And I think Erin's going to be competing for world titles for a very, very long time, but didn't crack the top 5, arguably didn't come close, right? And so I think when you look at Molly and Gabriella, Katie, Caroline, and Betty Lou, like that is the unit that you're going to see kind of dominating women's surfing, I think, for the next few years. But it's an excellent point. I think absolutely there's been a generational shift on the women's side. But I don't know, Mitch, what do you see on tour for the women?
Well, Cole, I love you, my brother. Thank you for being a huge fan of the podcast, but I don't think we can consider Isabella Nichols a surfer out of the new school anymore.
Yeah, nor Tyler Wright, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he did mention, outside of pipe, which Tyler won.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But Bella made back-to-back finals over there in El Salvador, and then she won at Bells. She's been around, and this isn't her first her first win either. So I'd say that I think the new generation is definitely picking up, and I feel like, especially with the change in format, there's going to be a huge benefit, in my personal opinion, to the people that have been around a little bit longer. People that know how to grind out and win those close heats. Especially, as you said, Aaron Brooks, Rookie of the Year this year. Congratulations once again to her. But can she turn that around and make sure that she's winning those close heats where she lost a lot of them this year? Did make the semifinals multiple times, but I feel like right here, Molly obviously exceeded expectations once again. Gabby is to me really the one that's made major improvements. Katie, Caroline, we all know how good they are. And Sakura winning 2 events too. That's no slouch, but she did have some downtime in between the wins and her quarterfinal results. So that's where you want to make up for it.
Totally.
Don't guarantee your success relying on wins.
Yeah, I think that's a great note. The other thing I was going to add too is that, Luana Silva, I'd put her in that next generation group. Didn't have the greatest year on tour, but made 2 finals. Sawyer Lindblad,
World Junior Champion,
World Junior Champ, right? Sawyer Lindblad just won the U.S. Open again. She's going to be coming back. She had a great season last year on tour. Vahine Fierro, Bella Kenworthy. So I think we are in like a pretty significant generational shift on the women's tour.
Yeah, and especially if you look at the Challenger Series rankings at the moment too. I mean, we have a couple of teenagers in the top 5, top 10. So, we're gonna see a good number of them qualify for 2026 as well.
That's right.
Tia Zabrowski at the moment leading at just 14 years of age, which is just ridiculous. Thanks, Cole. Excellent question. And keep throwing them out there when we have one of these recap episodes. Our second question, from a couple of kids that I know right here from SoCal, at Logan_and_Marlo Harris. How often are events won back-to-back? Can Jack do it?
We looked this up during the break. It's not very often. I think if you think of kind of what we mentioned before, some of those generational moments of, maybe your Micks or your Andys and your Kellys, and it was a lot more common to see people go back to back or even season to season. But I think we looked it up. It's been a few years since a woman has won back-to-back events. That was Carissa Moore in 2023, and then Jack in 2022. So it can be done. Jack has done it before. I think your comment in the prior segment about Griffin not winning an event and having momentum build and to really have his fangs out looking for an event win this season in finals is a good one. I think you can hold 2 spaces at the same time. I think Jack's momentum through Tahiti and the system he's created in his life and the similarities between Tahiti and Fiji, I'd say if someone has a chance to go back-to-back, like Jack Robinson absolutely has a chance to go back-to-back. I think there's something about peaking at the right moment, too, in all sports, where it feels like Jack is peaking after Tahiti. And I don't see that as having like a downslope in Fiji. I think that's going to carry on for him. I think the men's draw is gnarly. Right, like Idolo Ferreira match 1, Griffin Colapinto match 2, Jordy Smith match 3, and fellow Volcom team rider and good friend Iago Dora in the finals if he gets that far. So I think he can do it. I just think it's anyone's to take in Fiji. But what about you, Mitch? You think Jack's going to do it in Fiji?
Well, the funny thing is that, as you said, we were looking it up because I couldn't remember when it happened, and this is my job. But the last person to do it was Jack back in 2022. So if there's somebody that can do it, it's definitely him. He's already had 2 regular season event wins, beating Kanoa over there at Bells in the final, beating Griffin right here in Tahiti. So there's obviously high expectations, of course, because you're deciding the world champion at this last event. But it's complicated given the format. I think at any other kind of format that you have definitely benefits the surfer a lot more. You have potential ladies. You're not surfing that many heats per day. Here it's like, can I sustain that kind of pace and elevate my performance each and every time I paddle out for a match? And yeah, once again, I think somebody that needs a little extra motivation could potentially be Jack Robinson. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Let me put it that way. But yeah, it doesn't happen that often, though, Logan and Marlo Harris. So great question.
It's a good question.
Hopefully, we see more diversity of winners in the future, too. But given the talent that we do have on tour, and especially, the prominent return of a lot of former world champions too, I feel like that could potentially be the case down the line. But great question. Our third one, at J Haley 87, if Cloudbreak barrels proper, who has the upper hand in the men's and women's final five? Ooh.
It's a good question. Just barreling. I mean, well, let's hope it does barrel proper. I think we mentioned it before, like even when Cloudbreak does that, like it's still a complex wave. It's a very long wave, right? And there's going to be sections in between, like the heavy barrel sections where turns are going to be required. It's not the same kind of a wave as a Teahopu. And if you look at, I think both the men's and the women's final five are very, very well deserving. I think they're all excellent tube riders. On the women's side, I think you can look at Caroline Marks and Katie Simmers and Amali Picklum as potentially being more comfortable in barreling left-handers than Gabriella Bryant and Betty Lucifer Johnson, but they are very quick learners, and I think the complexity of the wave is going to lend itself to it. It really is a toss-up there. And then on the women's side, every single one of these guys, like Italo Ferreira, Jack Robinson, Griffin Colapinto, Jordy Smith, Iago Dora, they can get tubed on reef break lefts. And it's just going to be really exciting. One thing I'll bring up, just a little story about Italo Ferreira, because we are 10 years removed from his rookie season. And for folks who weren't around then, it might be hard to imagine, but he was really under the radar when he qualified. It was right during, Gabriel had won the 2014 world title. Adriano came back and won the 2015 world title. The Brazilian Storm was really beefy on tour, and Italo was pretty unknown outside of sort of the QS at the time. He came on tour and he just wowed people right away. And I remember being in Fiji in 2015, and he was out there just like kamikaze hits over the shish kebab section is huge, and everyone's just like, oh my god, this guy's gonna die. And he's just sticking these huge turns. He's getting barreled. I think he made the quarters that year, I can't remember, but I do remember sitting in the airport with him on the way home, and I was sitting with it was actually Blair Marlin and Dane Reynolds. We were having a pizza at Naughty Airport or something, and we invited him over because Italo was just traveling by himself. He had no entourage, just sort of this young dude, didn't speak a ton of English, but super nice guy. And I remember sitting there and he's having a bite of pizza, and I think Blair was like, oh my god, you were amazing out there. And he's like, how much how much do you come here to be so comfortable on the reef? And he kind of smiles. He's like, this is my first time. He's never been there before, and he was just surfing the waves so well. So I don't know, man. I think if it's barreling proper on either side, it's anyone's ball game. All these surfers are worthy of being in the WSL finals, and I hope it pumps, and I hope we see some amazing tube rides. I hope we see some amazing combinations, big turns as well. But I don't know, Mitch. You have a little bit more of a critical eye for these kinds of things. Is anyone at a disadvantage across the men's and women's top five if it's barreling proper?
Disadvantage. Only if it's barreling. I definitely say that, the two less experienced on the women's side that we've seen are probably Sakura and Gabby. And that's just strictly because they're going on their backhand.
Sure.
But Sakura, great surfer at pipe. She's made it deep into there before. She's coming off a quarterfinal over there in Tahiti. But once again, it's a completely different wave. I think the one thing that benefits the both of them is that they're able to combine it with maneuvers. But to answer the question, strictly barreling, if there's one person that I see that really takes the cake out of everybody, it's Molly at the moment.
Right.
But the one thing I will say, Katie's size, she's able to squeeze into some really tight pockets right there. So if it comes down to that, maximizing your time within the barrel, I definitely see her having an advantage in that sense. On the men's side, it's pretty damn hard to pick somebody that's not good at barrel riding on the backhand, or even on the forehand. We do have two goofy footers, one of them being the top seed, Iago. He's an excellent barrel rider. Actually, the first time I met Iago and his father, Leandro, was in Puerto Escondido back in 2010. So that just goes to show you how much he's been riding the barrel since, we met 15 years ago. If I say that Jack Robinson is the most talented tube rider out of the 5 men that are included. I don't think anybody's going to deny or question that.
Sure.
He grew up at places like the Box over there in WA, especially going on the backhand. There's ways where you can fit in and maximize your time within the barrel in comparison to a goofy footer. We both know that. At a left that's just pushing you down the line the entire time. It's much easier to stall and grab your rail and just sit down on your board on the backhand than it is going on your forehand when it's just shooting you straight down the line. So if there's one person I say that has, the benefit out of everybody of being on their backhand right here, it's definitely Jack. But if there's somebody that doesn't care about going for it, as you said, number 7 in the world back when he made his debut in 2015, Italo, and he did get 5th that year back in 2015, as you said, in his debut. It's going to be a fun event. I can't wait for it.
It's going to be awesome. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in at the lineup pod. As Mitch said, if we didn't get to your question, we will hit you back in the DMs. Keep those things coming. And Mitch, always a pleasure. Everyone tune in to see the world title deciding Lexus WSL Finals presented by Corona Cerro. It's going to be in Fiji. The event window starts on August 27th, and the event will stream live at worldsurfleague.com and the WSL app. Mitch, I look forward to talking to you soon, and we're going to be breaking it down after this event for sure.
Winner take all, baby. Let's go. Let's hope Cloudbreak is pumping.